Just ignore that, don't worry about that.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a
We
little
have to do a
model.
line dance and stuff.
Okay, so
We press record.
I did.
Action.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the model, explain the various elements to it, give you an example, and then I'm going to ask you to go back to the statement that you made, that you wrote out early on, and then rewrite it using the model. So it's in your book if you want to make notes. So, behavior. Okay. So the example that I've got here is quite simply, I've noticed that on the last 4 days you have been arriving late each morning at least 10 minutes. Factual information, giving you information. This is what we're going to talk about. This is a behavior that I'm giving you feedback on. I've noticed that in the last 4 days you've arrived late each morning at least 10 minutes. Fact. I've observed it, I've seen it for myself. There's no question. The O is for outcome. So what this is about is, what was the outcome? What was the impact? What are the consequences of that behavior? So I've said to you that you were late every morning for the last 4 mornings, at least 10 minutes. That is behavior. So what is the outcome? And this is what the outcome was. When that happened, it meant that our morning briefing didn't start on time, and it had an impact on our agenda and what we discussed. Again, it's a fact. That's what happened. When you were late each of those mornings, it delayed our morning briefing. We couldn't start on time, and that meant the agenda was rushed, and we didn't talk about things the way we should have. That was the outcome. Fact. Information. Data. Behavior. Outcome. The next thing, feeling. So how did that behavior and that outcome, how did that make me feel? And how did that make others feel? So what I might say here is, this frustrated me, and I know that the team really got annoyed as it had an impact on the rest of their day. So why is that important? What's the power of expressing that feeling? Because it's something that a lot of people have an uncomfortableness with in expressing how they feel in a business sort of context. Why is that important, to include how you felt or how it made other people feel?
Makes it feel real, doesn't it? Personal.
Sorry?
It makes it feel real, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because God, it's an
Yeah, but-
association to someone feeling that, and then the rest of the team, it's affecting everyone else, not just that small vicinity of
Yeah.
people.
You want to say, Chris?
We've got written over there as to not be talking about involving our emotions or making it personal, and now we're making it personal with describing our feelings. So, like,
I'm not being personal towards the person. I'm not calling them, you know, I'm not what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not insulting them. I'm not making it personal. I'm just expressing how I felt. This is how it made me feel. And nobody can argue with that. Nobody can argue with how you felt. And it's an extremely powerful way of getting a message across. I've based what I'm saying on fact. This is what the behavior was. Here was the impact, the outcome of that behavior, and this is how it made me feel. A very powerful way. It's not It's personal, Chris, yes, in that I'm expressing how it's making it personal to me, how I felt. I'm not making it personal against the other person, if you know what I mean. I'm not labeling them. I'm not accusing them of not having respect for people's time, etc., etc. I'm just quite frankly stating, this is what happened. Here's the impact that it had, and this is how it made me feel. And I know it annoyed the team as well. And nobody can argue with how you feel. And I don't know whether it's a cultural thing, but a lot of people have difficulty in expressing how they feel in the business kind of way. If you listen to industrial leaders, business leaders, when they're being interviewed on radio or TV, they often will express how they feel. They're concerned, they're worried, they're excited, they're motivated. It keeps them awake at night. It's a very powerful way of getting a message across. Then, the final piece is, so what's my future expectation? However, before we get to that part, what needs to happen, so I've described the behavior very specifically. I've explained the outcome of that behavior very specifically. I've expressed how that makes me feel and how it makes the rest of the team feel. What now is important is, so Chris, help me understand what's happening here. Help me understand why it is that you've been late consistently for the last 4 or 5 days. What's the reason? What's happening? What's going? Help me understand why you've been late every morning this week. When this model was first explained at some of the sites in Northern Ireland, they went straight from there to there, which meant that the feedback was all one way. Behavior, outcome, feeling, this is what I need you to do in future. Without giving the other person any opportunity to be involved in the conversation. The proper way of using this model is stating those pieces and then saying, Chris, okay, so why is it that you've been late? What's the reason? Help me understand. And you'll have that conversation. Maybe there is a good reason for being late. Maybe his wife is in hospital and he's having to do the school run, whatever the case. Maybe there is a valid reason why he's been late. Maybe there isn't. Maybe it's just that Chris doesn't have any respect for other people's timekeeping, etc., etc. So you have that conversation. You're giving him the opportunity to contribute to that conversation. I'm maintaining his self-esteem because I'm willing, as you said here, to be open, encouraging him to be open. I'm willing to listen to his side of the story. It's not just about me and what I'm experiencing. I'm giving him an opportunity to be involved in the conversation. Having discussed it and having understood the reason, and maybe say, okay, for the next 2 weeks we'll change our meeting time so that you can still do your school run and be in time for the meeting, whatever the reason is. But any feedback has to end up with, here's my future expectation. In future, I think you would be a much better team player if you were able to arrive on time for a meeting. That's my expectation. You remember, we said feedback was all about maintaining a good behavior or changing a behavior. And this is what I'm saying, here's my expectation in future. My expectation is that you arrive on time for the meetings. So if you string those 4 pieces together, this is what it might sound like. I've noticed that on the last 4 days, you've arrived late each morning, at least 10 minutes. When this has happened, it meant that our morning briefing didn't start in time, and our agenda was rushed, and we didn't get to talk about things the way we should have. This frustrated me, and I know the team was annoyed, as it impacts on the rest of their day. In future, I think you'd be a much better team player if you were able to make an effort to be on time. Comments, thoughts, observations? How does that sound as a model to give that constructive feedback?